This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
The opinions on this program are those of the program host and guest and not necessarily those of WPSL. WPSL does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WPSL. Legal questions? Ask a lawyer. Give us a call at 340-1590, 340-1590 here at the studios of WPSL. And Ask a Lawyer with your host, attorney Stuart M. Address.
Good morning on this Friday before Hanukkah and Christmas. Hope everybody is doing well. We have an interesting show today, I think. A little bit of law, a little bit of politics, a little bit of pulling your hair out. By the way, I'm coming to you today from Honolulu. You can see in the backdrop. Oh, I'm not really in Honolulu. I'm in Fort Pierce.
Well, enjoy it because we're going to be mowing down those trees for condos.
No,
soon.
I like it.
Oh.
It's much better than the plain nothing backdrop.
Yeah.
For those of you listening on radio, they have a backdrop in here that you can see if
Beautiful.
you're listening on Facebook Live or if you watch the YouTube version that's put up in a couple days.
Looks like White City Park. It's kind of neat. Yeah.
Anyway, we have our first question. It's from Cliff from Swap Shop.
Uh-oh.
Cliff wants to know if you're walking on a sidewalk and a car careens onto that sidewalk and breaks several of your bones, what should you do? Come on, everybody knows the answer to this.
Sue the city.
You call a personal injury attorney. Yes, you definitely have a negligence claim there. And the unfortunate thing about law is the worse you're hurt, the better the case. The more money you get, and the more money the lawyer gets. The less you're hurt, the better for you, but not the better for the case. It is a weird dichotomy. It happens in non-PI cases as well, in my types of cases. Sometimes, if it's a discrimination case, a sexual harassment case, the worse the situation, the stronger the case and the more likely large damages are going to be awarded. And the less serious, a few comments here or there, you may win your case, but you may not get very much money. I always say it's better to not get hurt, whether it's physical or emotional, and live your life than need a lawyer. Anyway, we got John on line one to truly start it off before we get into a little bit of law and a little bit of politics. So hello, John. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm doing okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
I have a question for you. I have a dear friend that lives over on the west coast of Florida.
Oh, I like the West Coast. Smooth
like the West
waters,
Coast?
warm.
Well, I moved here. I moved there when I first came here 30 years ago.
Me too.
But she's not well, and she needs home care. And she says that she can't get Medicare because she has a pension. You know if that's accurate or?
Oh, goodness gracious!
Medicare or Medicaid?
Medicare.
We need to have something to give people who call in who have stumped the lawyer. I honestly don't know anything about how Medicare and Medicaid works and whether or not a pension would interfere with that. I wish I could give you an answer, but I'd be giving it out of my posterior.
All right. Well,
I don't really know.
That's an answer in itself.
Ask the posterior. Oh.
Yeah, I don't want to mislead you. I really don't know the answer to that.
Okay. All right. Just remember my advice to you. Whatever side Greg is sitting on, put the wallet on the other side.
Oh, that's a good idea. Thanks for calling, John.
All right. Thank you.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye-bye. All right. So we're gonna, before we go into a little bit of impeachment politics, just a little bit. I want to talk about an issue that it does come up a lot. It's come up this week, and whenever it comes up, it's uncomfortable for the attorney, it's uncomfortable for the client, but it's real. when you have hired an attorney in a civil case and you're paying him or her on an hourly basis, not all cases are contingency. They tend to be injury cases, disability, Social Security, malpractice, discrimination, civil rights, those types of things. But if you're suing on a contract or if you have a neighbor dispute, you're probably going to have to pay your lawyer hourly. So what happens when you truly are not responsible, you truly haven't done anything that should cause you to have to need a lawyer, yet you do need a lawyer because you've been sued, and now you got to pay this lawyer hourly, and month after month you start getting invoices, and it's mounting up, and you're sitting there at home feeling, why should I have to pay a lawyer this kind of money? I didn't do anything wrong. Can I get any of these fees back if I win? Now, I got that question. I've had that question many times. And I got that question again this week. And once again this week, I had to explain to the client that the type of case they were involved in, there was no provision in statute for attorney's fees, and there was no contract that talked about attorney's fees, so that no, even if you win, you may be stuck with paying me $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 in attorney's fees. That does not make anybody happy. It would not make me happy if I was the one paying it. And even being the one getting the money, I'm happy to get the money. It's my business. But I am uncomfortable in that if you really had no responsibility and you have to defend yourself and you're spending all this money, it's not something that makes me happy either. So we were talking with this client and other clients in the past about a somewhat complicated mechanism to perhaps be able to recover attorney's fees. And I thought I would just discuss it briefly now because it really does apply to anybody who happens to be sued. And even if you are the one suing and you want to try to recover fees, there's a mechanism for that as well. There's a statute that it changes its name periodically. It's called a proposal for judgment or an offer of judgment. And it is a device that has to be used very carefully because I tell every client once you use it, the other side will use it as well. Usually, you have to make a very careful decision about whether you want to take this risk. Because what it means is, if you're wrong and you lose, you'll be paying their attorney's fees. So you have to really carefully consider just how much risk you want to take. So how does it work? All right, go get your blackboards if you're of my age. If you're younger, go get your whiteboards. And we won't even talk about whether or not there is a deep state conspiracy in blackboards now becoming whiteboards.
You're becoming racist.
I mean, some might say that's a deep state conspiracy. I don't know. What's next? What are we?
What have we become?
Got White City just across from us, and whiteboards now. I don't know. All right. Get out your pens and paper.
So all this is normally in writing, I presume?
Oh, yes, it has to be in
before
writing.
you do this? Okay.
Yes. So this is the way it works. Let's say you are the plaintiff. You're the one doing the suing. But there's no attorney's fees mechanism so that if you want to get whatever you win plus your attorney's fees, what do? I'm going to try to use round numbers to illustrate the point. You can serve an offer of judgment on the other side. You don't file it unless it's accepted or unless the case is over and you're trying to get your attorney's fees. But you serve it on the other attorney, offer of judgment. You're the plaintiff. Let's say you truly believe that your case is worth $125,000. That if you win, the jury is going to give you at least $125,000. Then you do an offer of judgment for $100,000. Why? because it's designed to put pressure on the other side to think carefully before saying no. Because if you're right and you win the case and the jury awards you $125,000 and a penny, they now have to pay your attorney's fees from the date you served that offer of judgment. Now, if you win and you get $124,000, you get your $124,000, but no attorney's fees. You must win at least 25% more than you say you're willing to take. So that requires you to truly analyze the value of your case and to be willing to go 25% lower to pressure the defendant into thinking, gee, maybe I should say yes. Okay, so that's the plaintiff. You're a defendant. Now, how could you use it? Well, let's say you believe that the other side has no case at all. None. You do a proposal for judgment. You'll let them have judgment. You'll let them win. And you'll give them a penny. Now, if they reject that and you win, they have to pay your attorney's fees. But let's say we're not dealing with a penny. Let's say you're a defendant and you're worried that the plaintiff might win and you want to try to at least protect your attorney's fees somehow. Let's say you truly think that their case is worth $100,000. Then you serve a proposal for judgment for $100,000. And if you either win the case completely, of course, you're going to get attorney's fees. Or if you lose the case, but you get, the plaintiff gets $75,000 or less, you get your attorney's fees. They get their money, but it's set off by your attorney's fees. Why? Because they didn't get 25% more than you offered. See, the 25% is a key number here. With the plaintiff, you have to get 25% more than you were willing to take. With the defendant, the plaintiff has to get 25% less than you were willing to give him.
Boy, I have never heard that. That's fascinating.
All right, so now, why isn't it used all the time in situations where there's no statute that provides for attorney's fees, like the Title VII discrimination statute, or the Florida Civil Rights Act, or Whistleblower Act? And there's not a written contract case, so there's no provision that says prevailing party gets attorney's fees. Why doesn't everybody use this? Because of the risk. Because if you are the plaintiff and you do this, the defendant is likely going to come back with a proposal for judgment for a penny. And now, if you happen to lose, if 6 people on a jury rule against you, not only have you lost and you've paid your attorney, let's say me, now you're paying the other side's attorney as well. So there's a big financial risk there. The financial reward is you recover your attorney's fees. The risk is you pay the other side's attorney's fees. And this applies whether you're the plaintiff or the defendant. If you're willing to take that risk, and in certain cases it's a reasonable risk to take, then your attorney can advise you and you do serve a proposal for judgment and know that the other side's probably going to hit you back with one, unless they accept your proposal, because you pressured them into a number that it was hard to say no. But if they're willing to fight, if they're willing to reject your offer, you can expect you're going to be getting one of those proposals back. So it's a sword and it's a shield. But if you pull out the sword, or if you try to use it as a shield, you better be prepared the other side's going to pull out the sword. And so it takes a lot of discussion, and with my current client, we broached it just in passing this week and discussed that we would talk about it in more detail at a particular time later on in the case. But also realize that you don't get your fees back from the beginning when you hired that wonderful lawyer. Your fees start when you serve the proposal. So if you served a proposal on the day before trial and you win and you're entitled to your money, you're only getting it from the attorney's fees that occurred from the day before trial.
You only get 1 day's fees?
No, from the day before trial. So
Right.
let's say it's a 2-week trial.
Oh, I
you get all
gotcha.
those
Okay,
fees.
yeah,
But you
yeah,
don't
yeah.
get the fees back from when you were sued or you sued. You don't go all the way back a year, 2 years, or more. The clock starts when you serve that proposal. So that's also a strategic decision that one has to make. If you're going to pull the trigger on this statutory device, when do you do it? Because the longer you wait, the lesser your fees you're going to recover.
So how often do you run into cases like this?
I
I've never
would
heard
say that at any given time, maybe 20% of my cases have a proposal out there, either that we've served, they've served, or one of us has retaliated and served in response.
this. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's not frequent, but it's not infrequent. It's something that truly has to be thought through carefully. It needs to be explained carefully, and you have to talk to your client honestly about what might happen if the case goes to a trial and a jury, and 6 people who you don't know who they're going to be are going to decide this case. You know, good cases get lost, and so you may have to pay the other side's fees. Bad cases get won. It happens. And so there has to be a true heart-to-heart, attorney and client, with the attorney trying to give the best advice possible, because this is a tough decision for a client to make. And the client must make the decision. It is not the attorney's decision to make. So, if you have questions about that or anything else, give us a call at 340-1590. As they like to say in radio, that's 340-1590.
And stay away from the FISA court. Oh.
Oh, gosh. Okay. Oh, well. It's a legitimate court, and, don't attack it too much. All right. Let us talk briefly about one teeny tiny aspect of impeachment. There have been 3 presidential impeachments in our nation's history. And after each of those impeachments, the impeached president has obviously made statements to the country. Let's go through some of those statements and see some common themes and where one departs from the other. Greg is laughing already.
Let me see who's the one that never mind. Go ahead.
All right. When Andrew Jackson, I'm all confused now.
It's one of those guys.
One of those guys. Oh, gosh.
That's all right. If a young person is listening, they don't understand.
Right,
history
civics,
anyway,
they don't know that anyway.
Forget about it. Oh.
Somebody's going to call and tell me. I should Google it. I don't know why my brain just froze. Anyway, when he was impeached in the 1860s, what he said was, "If I am insulted while civilities are going on, I will resent it in a proper manner. And in parting here tonight, I have no anger nor revengeful feelings to gratify." He went on, "All I want now, peace has come and the war is over, is for all patriotic men to rally around the standard of their country and swear by their altars and their God that all shall sink together, but what this union shall be supported." And the last part of what he had to say that I'm going to quote is, "In parting with you tonight, I hang over you this flag, not of 25, but of 36 stars. I hand over to you the Constitution of my country, though imprisoned, though breaches have been made upon it, with confidence hoping that you will repair the breaches. I hand it over to you, in whom I have always trusted and relied, and so far I have never deserted, and I feel confident while speaking here tonight, for heart responds to heart of man, that you agree to the same great doctrine."
That's actually very nice.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is.
It says, I'm going to handle this, decently.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep working for the country. I hope everybody does the same. I'm upset, but I'm going to handle it, as a big boy. And, he was saved from conviction by one vote in the Senate. One vote. Now, I don't know. I mean, I wasn't alive in the 1860s. Some say I might. But could one person have been swayed by those types of post-impeachment comments? That maybe you should just give him a shot. You know, he realizes he's done some things wrong, and
Could he be a relative of Trump's?
I don't think so. Yeah. Okay. So now we have the second impeachment in our nation's history, William Jefferson Clinton. And after being impeached, he addressed the nation. We had TV back then. And he says, among other things, the question is, what are we going to do now? I have accepted responsibility for what I did wrong in my personal life. And I have invited members of Congress to work with me to find a reasonable, bipartisan, and proportionate response. He goes on. Meanwhile, I will continue to do the work of the American people. We have a lot to do before we enter the 21st century, and we still have to keep working to build that elusive one America I have talked so much about. He continues, I want to echo something Mr. Gephardt said. That was the then Speaker of the House, folks.
Richard Gephardt,
Yes.
yep.
It is something I have felt strongly about all my life. We must stop the politics of personal destruction. We must get rid of the poisonous venom of excessive partisanship, obsessive animosity, and uncontrolled anger. Boy, that sounds like somebody could be saying that today. And then he goes on, I want the American people to know today that I am still committed to working with people of good faith and goodwill of both parties to do what's best for our country, to bring our nation together, to lift people up, to move us all forward together. It's what I've tried to do for 6 years. It's what I intend to do for 2 more until the last hour of the last day of my term. That was Clinton's
Nice.
speech.
That was nice.
He says I was wrong. He says I accept responsibility. He says let's move on. He holds out a hand to the Republicans. And he talks about the politics of destruction, which he was right. It got worse every day and every year after him, until to now it's uncontrollable. Well, Mr. Donald J. Trump, the 45th President of the United States, was impeached earlier this week.
It's a sham. Oh.
Yeah, well, we can that could be a whole series of shows. We could go, ask a wannabe politician. I did want to be back in college. So Trump said some things right after being impeached and right before being impeached.
Did he say it or did he tweet it?
No, he said it, and before he wrote it.
Okay.
So what did he say? He was at a rally in Battle Creek, Michigan, right when he was given the information backstage that he had been impeached. So what did he say? We did nothing wrong. We did nothing wrong, and we have tremendous support in the Republican Party, like we've never had before. Sounds a little defiant to me. I don't know about you, but I'm having a good time. I'm not worried. He goes on, through their depraved actions today, crazy Nancy Pelosi's House Democrats have branded themselves with an eternal mark of shame. He continues, what they could be doing are declaring their deep hatred and disdain for the American voter. This lawless partisan witch hunt is a political suicide march for the Democrat Party. They're the ones who should be impeached, every one of them. And he says, everything. I gave him everything. That's okay. I don't want anything for it. I don't need anything for anything. She calls me up. It's the nicest thing that's ever happened. Thank you so much. John would be so thrilled. This is talking about former Democrat. He's looking down. He'd be so thrilled. Thank you so much, sir. This is because Trump lowered the flags to half-mast when John Dingell died. And Trump responds, I said, that's okay. Don't worry about it. Maybe he's looking up. I don't know. Maybe. Implying that the deceased Democrat is in hell.
Yep.
Now, before we go on to what did he do before he was impeached, let me ask you all something and invite you to call. I don't even care if you agree with those statements. I don't care if you agree that the Democrats were wrong. I don't care if you agree it was a witch hunt. I don't care. My point is that the statement of a leader after being impeached? Is that what the prior two presidents, how they spoke after being impeached? I have a problem with how he responded to being impeached. Should he be angry? You better believe it. Especially if he truly believes he did nothing wrong. Better believe he should be angry. Should be furious.
With his perfect phone call.
Right. He should be incensed. Absolutely. But the President of the United States, we have always looked to that person to maintain calm and a cool head and be dignified. Goodness knows what would have happened during the Cuban Missile Crisis if Trump was president. We wouldn't be here today because we'd have nuclear war with Russia. You know that.
No.
Or he would have said, Russia, send your bombs and we won't do anything back. You can take us over.
There wouldn't be a Cuba.
But let's be realistic. I mean, I don't even know. I'm a Bill Clinton fan. I don't even know if Bill Clinton could have handled the Cuban Missile Crisis. I don't know if Barack Obama could have handled the Cuban Missile Crisis. We were lucky. We had John Kennedy there who very strategically walked a tightrope between giving in to Russia or having a nuclear war. It was masterful. Folks, if you haven't read books about it, watch the movies, which I know are somewhat dramatized, but, you know, they're the essence. We were fortunate to have that man in office at that time, if for nothing else, if you disagree with everything else he did, but for how he handled the Cuban Missile Crisis.
This world would have been a different place had he survived and had Bobby survived.
That's very true, too. And we never know what course we're going to take. And so everything is consequential. Kennedy's assassination was consequential. Okay, what would have happened if he had survived? Would his brother have also become president? Everything, you know, every decision that is made takes you on a path. We've now had 3 years of President Trump, and we're on a path. And as I've told my son many, many times, you can take the wrong road, and very often you can come back and go back and take the right road. But sometimes, once you make that decision to go down a road, that's it. Your tree of life now branches out from that decision point. You can't come back. Now, can we come back from the ridicule in the world? Can we come back from our president not being viewed as a leader, at least among the world? Can we come back as no longer having the president of the United States be the leader of the free world? Yeah, I think we can come back. I think we can come back with a sober, diplomatic president. If Mr. Trump is reelected somehow, can we come back 4.5, 5 years from now? I truly don't know. I fear for the country. And I say that, some of the Democrats talked during the impeachment. They were being very sober, and the Republicans laughed at them. I'm telling you, folks, I say this with sobriety. I fear for the country if we have to try to put the pieces back together 5 years from now. What will be of the First Amendment? What will be of the independence of the judiciary? What will be of the separation of powers between the executive and the legislative branches of government? What will be in the world? Will there be a NATO? I fear that we can go so far down the wrong path that this country, like every other country that has existed before it, could be irreparably harmed. But that's my personal opinion. In talking about how these presidents have handled the impeachment. That's not an opinion. These are what they said. And now let's take a look to what President Trump said right before the impeachment. Many of you probably know, some of you don't. He decided to write a 6-page letter to Speaker Pelosi right before the impeachment. And it's been widely reported that this was unusual, to say the least. The tone of the letter was absurd. People were shocked. Again, no matter what you agree with the substance, the rantings of a president prior to being impeached are surprising. So what did he say? By proceeding with your invalid impeachment, you are violating your oaths of office, you are breaking your allegiance to the Constitution, and you're declaring open war on American democracy. He went on, you have developed a full-fledged case of what many in the media call Trump derangement syndrome. And sadly, you will never get over it. You view democracy as your enemy. He said, you are the ones interfering in America's elections. You are the ones subverting America's democracy. You are the ones obstructing justice. You are the ones bringing pain and suffering to our republic for your own selfish, personal, political, and partisan gain. He wrote, you dare to invoke the Founding Fathers in pursuit of this election nullification scheme. Yet your spiteful actions display unfettered contempt for America's founding, and your egregious conduct threatens to destroy that which our Founding Fathers pledged their very lives to build. Even worse than offending the Founding Fathers, you are offending Americans of faith by continually saying, I pray for the president, when you know this statement is not true, unless it is meant in a negative sense. It is a terrible thing you are doing, but you will have to live with it. Not I. And he concludes, your legacy will be that of turning the House of Representatives from a revered legislative body into a star chamber of partisan persecution. Perhaps most insulting of all is your fake display of solemnity. You apparently have so little respect for the American people that you expect them to believe that you are approaching this impeachment somberly, reservedly, and reluctantly. No intelligent person believes what you are saying. That is the sum and substance of President Trump's 6-page missive to the Speaker of the House. Now, I say to you again, I don't mind if you believe that stuff, but that is not the way the President of the United States should behave. That's my point. That doesn't inspire confidence. It doesn't inspire leadership. It inspires concern, even among a lot on the right. Anyway, we do have Bob on line one. Hello, Bob. How can I help you, or do you want to tear me apart? Bob?
I can barely hear you.
I'm sorry. I speak loud, but I don't know how to speak much louder.
Okay. Oh, okay. Donald Trump, I can understand his outrage. I think I would be outraged too. However, if a president refers to his opponents as Sleepy Joe, Crooked Hillary, Mini Mike, Ryan Ted, on and on and on and on with the names. He may be 72, 73 years old, but his mind is 10.
Yeah, he's in the playground at the elementary school. Yeah, I've heard that said. That's elementary school behavior.
Yeah.
You there, John? You there, Bob? I think Bob dropped off.
I'm here.
There he
As
is,
I say, I can barely hear you, but I am here.
All right. Did you have any other points you wanted to make?
No, that's it.
All right.
Thanks.
Well, thank you for calling. All right. I do agree with Bob, and I've heard it said by others too, that the knee-jerk reaction that this president has demonstrated throughout the last 3+ years is that of a schoolyard bully.
I'm surprised a New York business guy like him. Now, I could see the thuggery side, but would be so thin-skinned.
So am I. I can understand the negotiation tactics and all that kind of stuff. But, to take on a 16-year-old girl, come on. I mean, we can go example after example after example. And that's the problem. The problem is we can go example after example after example. There will be, I promise you, there will be soon in colleges and universities across the country a political science class, impeachment in America. And they'll review the 3 presidential impeachments and perhaps some federal judicial impeachments to understand that aspect of our Constitution. They're going to be writing about this. There are going to be books about this. There are going to be college classes about this, in college and in law schools.
You're assuming that colleges will still have political science.
I am assuming that because my degree is not going to become Yes, I am assuming that there's only so much destruction that can be occurred by one person. Well, I guess he could destroy the world by launching weapons, but All right, I'm just waiting to get blasted. We got Jerry on line 1. Hello, Jerry.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Just fine. I have a question on technicality of impeachment.
Okay, I'll try to answer that, if I can.
Pelosi hasn't climbed off her broom yet to send it over to the Senate. So, has Trump been impeached?
Yes, he has been impeached. This is how it works. The Constitution provides that the House has the sole power of impeachment. Impeachment is the equivalent of a grand jury indictment or a state's attorney issuing an arrest warrant. It's a charge. So he has been impeached by the House of Representatives. That will be forever his legacy, just like it will forever be Bill Clinton's legacy. It will be the first line of both of their obituaries, no matter what else they've done. That's life. When they teach this, Trump will be one of 3 people, American presidents, ever impeached. But he is not removed from office. I had to explain this to my mother, too, this week. He is not, she's a Canadian. He is not removed from office unless he's convicted in the Senate. And no American president has yet been removed from office through the impeachment process. So if it goes over to the Senate, and it will, and the Senate finds him not guilty, which it will, then he is impeached forever. But he stays in his job. That's basically how it works.
Well, there were 3 constitutional attorneys on...
one of them from my alma mater.
That could be.
Yeah, the one who's a liberal and was very conservative, Jonathan Turley from George Washington.
Yeah, well, Turley said last night, unless she sends it over there, the articles of impeachment, that will die.
Well, I hate to disagree with a constitutional law professor, particularly one from my old law school, but I do disagree with him. I don't know where he's getting his legal authority for that. It certainly doesn't come from the Constitution. There can be an arrest, let's say, or an indictment by the grand jury. It's never prosecuted. The person has still been indicted. Okay? Charges, let's say, are dropped. They're still indicted. They've still been arrested. If perchance, and it's not going to happen, but if perchance Pelosi never sent the articles of impeachment over to the Senate, all that really means is there was never a trial, there was never an effort to remove him in the Senate, but he remains impeached by the House of Representatives, which is a separate and distinct body than the Senate within the legislative branch of government. I'm sorry, what was that?
Oh, that was a passenger in here. My son was...
Okay. So, I mean, I disagree with Professor Turley. I typically respect a lot of what he says. I watch him a lot on CNN. I was a little surprised that he took the position he did during the impeachment hearings. But, he's a constitutional law professor. I'm just a lawyer. But I clearly disagree with him on this point.
Okay, well, he wasn't the only one that said that. There was a couple of others on there, and I forget who they were.
Right,
one of them was the Jewish attorney who is a Democrat.
Okay.
Oh, shoot, I can't remember his name. You know who he is,
No,
probably.
Alan Dershowitz?
Alan Dershowitz, yep.
A Harvard law professor.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, he's also a constitutional law professor.
Yep.
Very
Well, anyway,
esteemed,
got to
very
go.
revered.
We're here where we need to be right now. So
We are, and I assume in January, after the Senate sets its rules, the articles of impeachment will be sent over. They'll be disposed of relatively expeditiously, and for about a year we will have a monarch. Because what else can we do to him? He knows that.
well, that's better than having a lady driving a broom.
I don't think so, actually. But, yeah, to each their own. Thanks for calling.
All right, you bet.
Bye-bye.
There you go. Now the parade's probably.
Okay, here we go. What do we got next? We got Paul on line 3. Hi there, Paul.
Hi, how you doing
Are you
today?
calling to praise me or to shoot me?
Neither. I just have a question
All
for
right.
you. Does Nancy Pelosi, as being Speaker of the House, have the authority to petition the Supreme Court and John Roberts to disqualify those who have already said they will not be impartial?
Wow, that is an amazing, interesting, fascinating, and very serious question. I have myself been thinking not about disqualification. That's an interesting thing you raise. But as I have been listening to McConnell and some of the others, Lindsey Graham, did I get that one wrong too? I'm sort of
Yeah, you're
all
good.
right. As I've been listening to say, well, I've made it clear how I'm voting, and McConnell, was made it very clear what he's doing.
He says, I am not impartial.
Right. They have to take an oath. You're right. They take a constitutional oath during an impeachment trial to be fair and impartial and rule based upon the evidence. Now, what happens in our courts, our regular courts every day, when you're conducting voir dire and somebody says they can't be impartial? They're disqualified.
Yeah.
Just like that. I mean,
Right.
There's a whole body of law, jurisprudence on this. Now, it's never occurred in the context of an impeachment trial by the Senate. But now, I haven't even researched this. You raised an interesting question. We have two doctrines that are going to clash. We have the doctrine that you're sort of talking about, the jurisprudence of adhering to your oath, okay, and having come out ahead of time and saying, I'm not going to adhere to it. How can that person serve as a juror? Yet on the other hand, the Constitution says that the Senate shall be the jurors. All of the senators shall sit at all times. They don't get to walk in and out of the trial. It's like a real jury. They all sit there. They can't ask questions. They just got to sit on their tuchuses and be quiet. Very hard for any senator, Democrat or Republican. So you have the Constitution basically envisioning all the senators being the jurors. But then you have what may be for the first time in our history, senators coming out and saying, this is how I'm going to vote. And I include among that the Democrats. Okay? It may be one thing in your heart to think it. It's another thing to come out and say it.
Absolutely.
I don't know how that plays out. And, the court that resolves those issues of original impression, first impression, is the Supreme Court. So if somebody, and I don't know if you can petition the Supreme Court, I think a senator could probably make a motion before the Chief Justice as the trial begins to disqualify X number of senators. And then there's going to be either a quick denial or there's going to be a quote-unquote a hearing where there'll be argument presented as to why it should or shouldn't be done. It's interesting, too, the Chief Justice is the judge in the Senate trial. It's not the other 8 justices. So it's not like you can appeal to the Supreme Court to decide this issue. You're asking John Roberts to decide this issue.
Could you appeal to the Supreme Court to have them hear it rather than the Senate?
I don't think so. because the Senate gets to make its rules, and the Senate in the Constitution are the jurors. I don't know how you would get a lawsuit. I don't get how you would get a lawsuit actually filed. I mean, could the Speaker of the House, on behalf of the House of Representatives, file a lawsuit in federal court, District of D.C., seeking to disqualify those members of the Senate who have advocated and announced their positions prior to taking an oath? Let's assume she files that complaint. Now a federal district judge is going to have to hear something that has never been argued before. Both sides are going to come up with historical precedent to try to analogize the answer. And let's say the federal district judge rules any way you want, granted or denied. Now the other side appeals. It goes to the D.C. Circuit Court to rule.
This could last another 10 years.
Well, but that's another constitutional clash. Then, after the D.C. Circuit rules, it can go to the Supreme Court. But you're right. The trial, they're entitled to have a trial. And the whole reason that the House didn't go to the judiciary on the obstruction is because of how long it would take. So what do? There's a big clash here in doctrine. Is it possible to file an original petition to the Supreme Court?
Okay, what's that?
Okay, in Article 3, the powers of the judiciary, the Supreme Court has original jurisdiction over certain matters. Now, it can act as a trial court. It virtually never, ever happened.
I was going to say, has it ever happened before?
But let's say Iran sues the United States. The Supreme Court can decide we will hear that court. And we will hear that case. Because it's a nation against a nation. Okay? There are a couple other circumstances of original jurisdiction. I don't know if this falls within them. But what a fascinating argument that the Supreme Court should accept original jurisdiction over this type of a lawsuit because a ruling is needed so expeditiously as to preserve the other constitutional mandates of a Senate trial and of the oath, etc. I don't begin to know, I haven't begun to think about the arguments. Maybe Turley and Dershowitz and all can sort of hash them out. But I think it's a fascinating concept as to whether or not senators who have announced their vote ahead of a trial should be allowed to vote.
Well, they've already polled them.
I know.
It's like,
and honestly, there is a farce that exists. It's a fiction that we allow to exist. Let's say they don't announce. Let's say Chuck Schumer does not announce how he's going to vote. Do we know how he's going to vote? We do. Do we know what decision he's made? We do. Is he fulfilling his oath? Probably not. So what do? We can't disqualify everybody. Do we just disqualify those stupid enough to come out and announce how they're going to vote?
well, I think they all have.
On
both sides. It's, yeah.
Maybe if we have one independent in the Senate, that he could be the one person on the jury. And we disqualify all the Democrats and the Republicans. I don't know. It is a fascinating constitutional question. And it's a serious one, too. And we laugh about it, but you take an oath in the Senate to judge the matter fairly and rule according to the evidence. Either that oath means something or it's just procedure. It's a joke. Of course,
the Republicans are going to say there is no evidence.
Right,
well, and that's, that's the whole mess.
But you're taking an oath to do justice, to be fair, to be impartial. Is that a fiction or is it reality? I think it's probably more of a fiction. I hate to say that. It hurts my heart to say that.
May come to a test.
But then again, what did the framers intend? They intended the Nixon situation. They intended that people would judge it, not on party, but on facts. they intended that the Republican Party in control at the time would either vote to convict Nixon if the House impeached him, or do what really occurred: have members of the House and the Senate go to Nixon, Republicans, and say, "You're going to be impeached. You're going to be removed from office. We are going to agree with your removal. So either go through this process or, resign." And he resigned. Those were Republicans, I submit, that looked at what occurred and said, A, it's wrong, B, it's impeachable, and C, we're not going to allow our party, the Republican Party, to go down and be dragged down by this.
And we need to move on.
Right. In this day and age, right now, to my shock, as I've expressed for many months, the Republican Party is standing next to President Trump and, boot marching, in unison. I don't understand it. I would think the Republicans would take any conceivable legitimate way to get out of this, get rid of the SOB, and continue with the Republican Party. Don't let him drag you down. But that's not what's happening. So, as we conclude another edition of Ask a Lawyer, I thank you for your calls. I will check beneath my car to make sure there's no devices. And I will be back next Friday as we close out the year.
Maybe.
Please. For another episode of Ask a Lawyer. Have a wonderful weekend. Those of you who are starting Hanukkah on Sunday night, happy Hanukkah. Those of you who are celebrating Christmas on Tuesday night and Wednesday, Merry Christmas. And for anything else, happy whatever, and I wish you the best. Bye-bye.
WPSL Port St. Lucie.